What if I told you? There was once a prison so deadly people believed the only way out was death. Surrounded by freezing ocean waters and guarded like a fortress, Alcatraz wasn't just a prison. It was a nightmare. But one man looked at those impossible walls and decided he would escape no matter what. This is the unbelievable true story of the world's most feared prison, and the criminal mastermind who dared to challenge it. Escape from Alcatraz. Can a prison really exist where escape is impossible? A place where the ocean kills you before the guards even can? Today's story takes us inside Alcatraz, the most dangerous prison in history. A prison built to destroy hope itself. But one prisoner was about to prove that even the strongest walls can be beaten. The movie begins with a highly intelligent and extremely dangerous thief named Frank Morris. Frank wasn't some ordinary criminal. He had robbed major banks across America, and what made him truly terrifying was this. Every single time he was locked up, he escaped. No prison had ever been able to hold him for long. It was almost as if walls meant nothing to him. Because of that, the government finally decides to send him somewhere no one was ever supposed to escape from: Alcatraz. And Alcatraz wasn't just another prison. It was a nightmare built on a lonely island in the middle of the freezing ocean. For thousands of meters in every direction, there was nothing but deadly cold water crashing against sharp rocks. Even if a prisoner somehow managed to break out of the cells, surviving the ocean was nearly impossible. The freezing currents could kill a man within minutes. And the security? It was terrifying. Every step, every movement, every breath was being watched. The moment Frank arrives at the prison, guards strip him of everything. From head to toe, he's searched like an animal. Every personal belonging is taken away, and he's forced into the prison uniform. Inside Alcatraz, nobody had freedom, not even the freedom to walk when they wanted. Every morning, the loud prison bell drags the inmates out of sleep. They line up in silence, wearing identical uniforms, collecting tasteless food while guards stare at them like predators watching prey. Discipline inside Alcatraz was brutal. One tiny mistake, and punishment was guaranteed. That's when the prison warden finally meets Frank. With a cold smile, he says, "Welcome to Alcatraz, a place famous for destroying men mentally before it destroyed them physically." During lunch, Frank notices a strange inmate named Litmus. The man quietly asks Frank for some food. Without hesitation, Frank gives him part of his meal. But then he notices something unusual hidden beneath the table: a tiny mouse. Litmus had secretly kept a pet mouse alive inside the prison, feeding it scraps of food every day. In a prison filled with cruelty and hopelessness, that tiny creature was the last piece of kindness left in his life. And for a brief moment, Frank realizes something important. Even in hell, people still search for something to love. A little later, Frank is called into the warden's office. The warden looks him directly in the eyes and says, "I've heard all about you. Every prison you've ever entered, you escaped. But this place is different. Nobody escapes Alcatraz. And even if you somehow got outside, there's nowhere to run. Only cold water waiting to kill you." Throughout the conversation, Frank remains completely calm. He acts quiet, obedient, harmless. He pretends like he has no interest in escaping anymore, like prison has finally changed him. But inside his mind, something far more dangerous is happening. While the warden keeps talking, Frank secretly steals a nail clipper from the office without anyone noticing. A tiny object, so small yet powerful enough to start one of the greatest prison escape plans in history. The moment he returns to his cell, he hides the nail clipper inside his Bible. Because Frank already understands one thing very clearly: if he wants to escape Alcatraz, strength won't help him. Only intelligence will. And that's where the terrifying escape plan truly begins. At first, Frank tries avoiding trouble inside the prison. He understands that even a small fight can become deadly in a place like Alcatraz. But there's one inmate named Wolf who keeps humiliating him again and again, pushing him beyond his limit. And then suddenly everything explodes. Frank finally snaps. In seconds, he attacks Wolf so violently that the entire prison falls silent. The fight is brutal. Frank beats him so badly that Wolf is left half unconscious on the floor, barely able to move. After that moment, the atmosphere inside the prison completely changes. The inmates who once feared Wolf now avoid even looking at Frank. Everyone finally realizes the truth. Frank Morris is not a normal man. If he can destroy someone as dangerous as Wolf, then nobody inside Alcatraz is safe around him. Some time later, Frank is assigned work in the prison library. That's where he meets an older inmate everyone calls English, a quiet man who has spent almost half his life behind bars. 20 years of prison had drained the life out of him. English speaks calmly, but his eyes carry pain, regret, and the bitter truth of someone who stopped believing in freedom long ago. After work, Frank meets another inmate who loves painting. The man is carefully drawing artwork while sitting alone. Frank notices a colorful flower painted on his shirt and asks him, "Why did you paint that flower?" The prisoner smiles softly and says, "Because this flower reminds me that freedom still exists inside my heart, even if my body is trapped here." That answer hits Frank deeply. Even inside the darkest prison on earth, some dreams still refuse to die. Later, Frank goes directly to English and asks him the question nobody dares to say out loud. "Can anyone escape this prison? And if they can, will you help me?" The moment English hears this, he bursts into laughter. Not because it's funny, but because it sounds impossible. He looks at Frank and says, "You think this is a prison? This place is a graveyard. Escaping Alcatraz means dying first." English explains everything to him. Even if someone somehow crossed the thick walls, avoided the guards, escaped the towers and security, where would they go? Outside waits an ocean so cold it steals the air from your lungs. The freezing water crushes your body within minutes. Most men would drown before sunrise. Finally, English says quietly, "Better to stay alive in here than die out there." But Frank's face shows no fear, only confidence. Inside his mind, one thought keeps repeating itself again and again. If escape is impossible, then why do people still keep trying? And that single question becomes the beginning of one of the most dangerous prison escape stories ever told. In the next scene, Frank is transferred from the library to the carpenter shop. The prison offers him 50 cents for every hour of work. Frank doesn't care about the money at all. But inside his mind, another idea begins forming. The carpenter shop might contain tools that could help him escape. As he works there, Frank slowly studies every inmate around him. He learns who can be trusted and who would betray him instantly. That's when he reconnects with Litmus, the prisoner with the mouse. Frank asks him directly, "Is there any way out of this place?" Litmus tells him something extremely important. Every prison cell has an air vent above it, and if someone could somehow break through the wall beneath it, they might be able to climb upward toward the roof. For the first time, Frank sees a real possibility. But before he can think further, trouble arrives again. One day, while prisoners are joking and talking together, Wolf suddenly attacks Frank from behind. He still wants revenge for the humiliation. Without wasting a second, Frank removes his coat, wraps it around Wolf's arms, and slams him hard to the ground. But this time, the guards in the watchtowers witness the entire fight. Gunshots explode through the prison yard. The guards immediately stop the fight, and the punishment is horrifying. Both men are sent to the torture cells. For 2 weeks, Frank suffers brutal physical and mental torture. Isolation, darkness, pain, silence, day after day. By the time he finally returns to his cell, he looks exhausted and broken. But then something unexpected happens. Litmus secretly sends him a tiny note using his pet mouse. "Welcome back." In a prison built to destroy humanity, that tiny message feels more powerful than freedom itself. Around this time, a new prisoner named Charlie arrives in the cell next to Frank's. Slowly, the two become close friends. Before long, Frank builds a small trusted group and finally reveals his secret. "I'm going to escape this prison. And soon." Meanwhile, the ruthless warden keeps a close eye on every inmate. One day, he visits the painter's cell and notices something strange. The prisoner's paintings have become even more beautiful than before. Instead of appreciating them, the warden becomes furious. He destroys every single painting. Then he gives a cruel order. "You will never paint again." The painter's entire happiness had lived inside his art. Without it, he completely falls apart emotionally. In rage and despair, he brutally injures his own fingers. The prison wasn't just locking men up. It was destroying their souls. Soon after, 2 new prisoners arrive at Alcatraz. And surprisingly, they're brothers. But what makes this shocking is that both of them already know Frank Morris from another prison. In fact, the three of them had once attempted a prison escape together before. Just like Frank, both brothers are intelligent, clever, and fearless. And almost instantly, they become part of his plan. According to prison rules, inmates are allowed to meet family members only once a week. That day, English finally sees his daughter after many years. The moment he looks at her, tears fill his eyes. His little girl has grown up without him, and the pain of realizing he missed her entire childhood completely destroys him inside. At the same time, Charlie receives heartbreaking news. His mother is dying. Doctors say she only has a month or two left to live. The news shatters him. And in that moment, Charlie makes a decision. No matter what happens, he has to escape. That same night, Charlie secretly approaches Frank and says, "If you ever make a real escape plan, include me." And finally, the escape team is formed. Together, they begin planning every tiny detail. Frank explains that each prison cell has a small vent leading upward. The vent is too small for a person to fit through, but there's one advantage. Because Alcatraz sits beside the ocean, years of salt water had weakened the walls from the inside. If they slowly dug through the concrete, they might be able to widen the opening enough to climb upward. The only problem? Frank's tiny nail clipper isn't enough. He needs stronger tools. Then during dinner, Frank notices a spoon. And suddenly, an idea sparks inside his mind. But stealing a spoon from prison wouldn't be easy. So Frank creates a distraction. One prisoner complains to the guard that his spoon is dirty, while another inmate secretly steals an extra spoon and hides it in his pocket. Now they finally have a digging tool. But another dangerous problem appears. Whenever Frank disappears into the vent at night, guards might notice his empty bed during inspection rounds. So the team comes up with another genius idea. They steal hair from the prison barbershop and create fake heads out of paper and soap. Then they place them on their pillows so guards believe the prisoners are asleep in bed. But there's still one terrifying question left unanswered. Even if they escape the prison, how will they survive the freezing ocean? That's when Frank turns toward one of the prisoners and says, "You work in the laundry department. Steal raincoats." The plan shocks everyone. Frank wants to build a floating raft using stolen raincoats filled with air. A homemade survival boat strong enough to cross the deadly sea. Charlie also asks for a role in the mission. Frank gives him the job of lookout. Every night while Frank digs through the wall, Charlie will stand guard. If anyone approaches, he'll give a signal immediately. And finally, the digging begins. But Frank still needs something sharp enough to cut through the concrete faster. Late one night, he visits another inmate who owns a pet mouse. Frank offers him a deal. "Give me some matches, and I'll bring extra food for your mouse every day." The prisoner agrees. Using the matches, Frank heats and sharpens the spoon and nail clipper, turning them into primitive digging tools. Slowly, night after night, the wall begins breaking apart. Then one terrifying night, everything almost goes wrong. Charlie accidentally falls asleep while standing guard. At that exact moment, the warden begins inspection rounds. Luckily, English immediately notices the danger. He quickly starts talking loudly to distract the guards. His voice wakes Charlie up just in time. Charlie instantly signals Frank. Within seconds, Frank hides every tool, covers the hole, and jumps back into bed pretending to sleep. The warden enters the cell area suspiciously. For a moment, it feels like everything is over. Then the warden notices a strange burning smell in the air. Frank calmly looks at him and says, "Sir, with you around, who would dare smoke in here?" The confidence in Frank's voice removes all suspicion. And just like that, the warden walks away. Without realizing it, after weeks of digging through solid concrete like men possessed, Maurice finally reaches a point where he can actually squeeze his body through the tunnel. For the first time in years, freedom no longer feels like a dream, it feels real. But just when hope begins to rise, another terrifying problem appears in front of them. The ventilation grill blocking the path is tightly screwed into the wall. Without a screwdriver, everything they've done so far means nothing. The very next day, Maurice takes a huge risk. During work duty, he secretly steals a screwdriver. But stealing it is only half the battle. Bringing it back into the prison cell without getting caught is nearly impossible. As he walks through the metal detector, alarms immediately go off. Guards stop him, search him, and snatch the tool right out of his hands. For a second, everyone believes the game is over. Feels like Morris's entire plan is about to collapse right there. But Maurice was smarter than all of them. The screwdriver the guards found was only a decoy. The real tool had already been hidden deep inside his shoes before the inspection even began. Maurice had planned every move ahead of time. That's the moment we truly understand how dangerous his mind really is. This wasn't just a prison escape anymore. This was a chess match against the entire prison system. Now Maurice secretly removes the grill and creates a hidden path into the ventilation shaft. But another problem immediately hits him. If he disappears into the vent at night, guards will instantly notice the empty bed during inspection. One mistake and everyone dies in prison. So now they need something insane. A fake human body. The prisoners begin stealing books from the library, soaking paper into a thick pulp, shaping it carefully into fake heads. They steal paint pens to color the skin, and slowly glue real hair onto the heads using stolen prison supplies. Every tiny detail matters. The fake faces look horrifyingly realistic in the dark. At the same time, Maurice creates a fake wall panel to hide the digging hole behind his cell. From the outside, everything looks perfectly normal. No cracks, no dust, no evidence. Finally, after weeks of preparation, the night arrives. Maurice places the dummy head carefully on his pillow, covering it with blankets so it looks like he's sleeping peacefully. Then silently, he disappears into the vent. Inside the narrow shaft, rusty pipes stretch endlessly through the darkness. Maurice climbs upward inch by inch, balancing carefully over the pipes until he reaches the second floor. But just when he thinks he's close, another steel grill blocks the final exit. Down below, prison guards are already doing nighttime inspections. Charlie keeps trying to warn Maurice using signals, but he has no idea if Maurice can even hear him through the walls. The tension becomes unbearable. Then suddenly, the warden stops directly outside Morris's cell. Something about the dummy head feels strange to him. He stares at the hair suspiciously, and slowly reaches his hand toward the bed. For one terrifying second, it feels like everything is over. But right at that exact moment, Maurice somehow manages to sneak back into bed and speaks casually from under the blanket. "What's wrong, sir? You really seem to like my hair tonight." The warden awkwardly laughs and walks away without realizing how close he came to discovering the greatest prison escape in history. Charlie nearly collapses in relief. Maurice had returned at the perfect second. The next morning, Maurice gathers his crew with huge news. He tells them they've finally discovered a possible route out of the prison. But there's still one massive obstacle left. The final escape opening is blocked by a heavy iron grill welded directly into the wall. Maurice admits something important. He can't break it alone. To reach that spot and destroy the grill, he needs another partner inside the vents. That's when John steps forward. John reveals that he has completely dug through his own wall too, meaning he can now reach the same tunnel system. He tells Maurice that tonight, the two of them will go together and inspect the final barrier closely. That night, both men crawl silently through the narrow ventilation shafts like ghosts moving through the prison walls. When they finally reach the iron barrier, their hearts sink. The grill isn't simply attached with screws. It's welded into solid steel. Breaking it by hand is impossible. The only way out now is with a powerful cutting tool. Something strong enough to cut through iron itself. The next day during music class, Maurice notices something small sitting in the corner of the room. An electric fan. The second he sees the fan motor, an idea explodes inside his mind. Maurice realizes he can transform the motor into a homemade drill powerful enough to cut metal. Calmly, without attracting attention, he tells one of his partners to hide the fan inside a music box. Guards inspect the instrument cases carefully, but they find nothing suspicious. Just like that, Maurice gains another weapon. Night after night, he secretly converts the fan motor into a crude drilling machine. Every screw, every wire, every tiny piece is assembled in complete silence. Then comes the moment of truth. Maurice and John return to the hidden tunnel once again. John lifts Maurice onto his shoulders so he can reach the welded iron rods near the ceiling. Carefully, slowly, Maurice starts cutting through the metal. The machine screams loudly inside the walls. Instantly, guards hear the noise. Boots begin moving upstairs. Flashlights scan the corridors. The guards are coming closer. At that exact moment, luck finally chooses Morris's side. He manages to cut through a pipe section, causing the drill sound to suddenly stop. The guards pause, confused by the silence. After a few seconds, they assume it was probably just plumbing noise and walk away without checking further. That single moment changes everything. For the first time, Maurice and his crew truly believe escape is possible. The next morning, Maurice can barely hide his excitement. Sitting at breakfast, he quietly tells his partners that the tunnel system is finally complete. No more walls. No more barriers. Nothing stands between them and freedom anymore. Then Maurice asks the most important question of all. The raincoat raft, is it ready? His partner nods. Yeah, everything's ready. And just like that, the final escape plan is officially set into motion. Later that evening, prisoners return silently to their cells. During book distribution, an English guard approaches Maurice's cell. Maurice suddenly looks at him and says something strange. Maybe this is my last day here. I just wanted to shake your hand. The guard shakes his hand awkwardly, but confusion spreads across his face. Something about Maurice's words feels deeply unsettling. It almost sounds like goodbye. Not long after, the warden suddenly arrives for an unexpected search. It's as if someone warned him something was wrong. He tears through Maurice's cell, checking every corner carefully. Even the fake wall gets inspected. But Maurice had hidden everything perfectly. The cardboard covering blends seamlessly into the wall. No evidence. No cracks. Nothing suspicious. Before leaving, the warden announces that Maurice will be transferred to another cell in the morning. But what the warden doesn't know is that morning will come too late. The prisoners plan to meet inside the tunnel at exactly 2 a.m. At first, Charlie acts brave. He promises he's ready. But as the hours pass and escape time gets closer, fear completely consumes him. His breathing becomes heavy. His hands shake uncontrollably. Meanwhile, Maurice, John, and the others successfully enter the tunnels and wait for Charlie in the darkness. They wait and wait, but Charlie never comes. Finally, with no other choice, the three men continue without him. As they crawl deeper through the prison walls toward freedom, Charlie sits alone in his cell crying silently. Freedom was only inches away from him, and fear stole it from his hands. After the final guard inspection, Charlie finally gathers enough courage to try escaping too. He rushes into the vent system desperately, but when he reaches the climbing point, his heart shatters. The opening above is too high. The others are already gone. He's too late. The dream of freedom dies right there in front of him. Broken and devastated, Charlie slowly climbs back into his prison cell, knowing he may regret this decision for the rest of his life. Meanwhile, Maurice and the others successfully reach the outer prison walls without being spotted by a single guard. One by one, they climb over the final fence. And finally, after years trapped inside the most feared prison in America, they become free men. But one final nightmare still remains: the freezing ocean surrounding Alcatraz. Using stolen raincoats, they begin inflating a handmade raft with nothing but their own breath. The process takes forever. Their lungs burn. Their bodies shake from exhaustion and cold. But they know there's no turning back anymore. Failure means death. After an exhausting struggle, the raft is finally ready. And then the three men disappear silently into the dark waters of the night. Morning arrives at Alcatraz prison like any other day. Guards begin their routine head count. At first, everything appears normal. Prisoners seem to be sleeping peacefully in their beds. But when guards reach Charlie's cell, something immediately feels wrong. Charlie stands there completely broken. His face is pale. His eyes are filled with regret. Without saying a word, he looks like a man who just lost his entire future. Even the warden notices something strange about him. But instead of stopping, he walks toward Maurice's cell and casually asks, "Is Maurice still sleeping?" Charlie says nothing. Now the guards feel nervous. One officer slowly opens the cell door and looks inside. And suddenly, pure chaos erupts. Lying on the bed isn't Maurice. It's a fake dummy head. A terrifyingly realistic fake human body. In that instant, everyone realizes the impossible has happened. Maurice escaped Alcatraz. Sirens explode across the prison. Guards run through every hallway. Every tunnel is searched. Every cell is inspected. But Maurice and the others are gone without a trace. The search expands into the ocean itself. Boats scan the freezing waters for hours. Rescue teams desperately search for bodies. But nothing is ever found. No bodies. No raft. No proof. Nothing. The mighty warden of Alcatraz, a man who once believed his prison was unbeatable, now stands humiliated before the entire world. The prison he called escape-proof had just been defeated by 3 ordinary prisoners. Soon the authorities begin demanding answers. How did 3 prisoners disappear from the most secure prison on Earth? But the warden has no real answer. To protect the prison's reputation, he orders newspapers and media outlets to spread one official story. The prisoners drowned in the ocean during their escape attempt. According to him, no human could survive those freezing waters. But deep inside, even he no longer believes his own lie. Because somewhere in his heart, the warden knows the terrifying truth. Maurice probably made it out alive. Eventually, the authorities lose faith in Alcatraz completely. The prison becomes an embarrassment instead of a symbol of power. And finally, a historic decision is made. Alcatraz prison is shut down forever. A prison once feared by the entire world, destroyed not by violence, but by intelligence, patience, and hope. And that's what makes this story unforgettable. Because sometimes the strongest walls in the world still can't stop a man who refuses to give up. Sometimes freedom doesn't come from strength, it comes from courage, intelligence, and the will to risk everything.